Thanks, Mark.
And I should say, she's German by birth, right?
Yes.
So she might have a slightly different perspective on us crazy Americans ripping around on these machines and this weird way we do our forecasting and things.
Oh, I'll make sure everyone knows that. Thanks, Mark, for the introduction. I have the great honor to present our season highlights, and I have to admit it's pretty intimidating to stand on this stage today after we've heard so many great talks and had emotions on this stage. So thanks for listening to me, what I have to say now. And I got instructed to not talk about science today, which is a big ask for a PhD student. So I don't want to promise anything, but I'll try very hard. But I already struggle on my first slide because I want to talk about some data, so sorry, Mark, for that. I want to talk about avalanches in the first place. So this season, we had 524 avalanches reported in our entire forecasting area. Most of them were naturally triggered, but we had 117 that were reported as human triggers. And unfortunately, we also have to report one fatality this season. Most avalanches have been triggered or observed in Cook City, 231, which is also interesting because it's one of the smaller forecasting areas in our advisory area. But it makes sense with the terrain that is in Cook City and the travel. So it's really nice to have a lot of people here from Cook City today. Thanks for coming. And the Bridger Range is the second highest with 86. And then the other advisory areas are balancing around 40 avalanches this season. So that's just how the spread is across the season, the advisory areas. The winner of our avalanche problem types is persistent slab. We had 122 reported persistent slabs. So especially early season, it was pretty touchy. And then wind slabs caught up pretty quickly. And so we also witnessed recently some wet loose and dry loose avalanches. But I want to stick a little bit with the persistent slabs because we had two really interesting persistent slabs this season that happened. That I quickly want to present to you. The first one happened early season near Sage Peak and Buck Ridge, and Ian and I got the chance to go out there. I have to say it was my second day on a sled, and I think Ian had a sleepless night because it was definitely me that was the hazard and not the avalanche danger out there. So thanks, Ian, for putting it up because it was really interesting to see this avalanche because what was happening is it was a remotely triggered avalanche that, first of all, spread out 5,000 feet, which is quite the avalanche. And then it triggered 6 more avalanches over a mile back in the valley. So you might not see them on this picture, but here they are. So there are really quite a lot of avalanches that got triggered by one sledder. And here we have some drone footage. I hope it's starting. And you can see for reference, that's me digging a chrome profile up there just to have a scale to this avalanche. And it went around even some rocks and cliffs and around corners. It still went and across those areas that here you can see it is very thin up here now, but it kept going and it kept going even around this corner. And why I show this with you now is because you can see now that the drone goes around the corner, you can see in the distance where the next avalanche started. So that propagation was pretty interesting to observe afterwards. And on our way out, Ian and I also triggered another avalanche. So on that day, it was really full-on persistent avalanche problem. Another really interesting story happened in Cook City on December 11th. And this story is not mainly about the persistent slab avalanche, but this story is about Joe. I don't know if Joe is here today, but if so, he really deserves a medal because Joe was getting ready in the parking lot and observed 2 other riders that were getting ready for the day. And he had the sense that something was off with those two guys when they got ready. And so he walked over, started chatting, and turns out they didn't have avalanche rescue gear, nor did they have a beacon. So Joe recommended that they should go to the Exxon and get some beacon, shovel, and probe. And if you haven't been to Cook City, the Exxon, it's really a gas station, and you can really rent a beacon there. But we won't talk about the gas station today now, but just a fun fact on the side. Anyways, the two riders got their gear, got out. Joe got his gear, got out with his group, and they rode out to Daisy Pass, and that's where they met again. Joe and his group decided not to ride down on the other side of Daisy Pass, but the two other riders, they decided to do so. And when the first rider dropped into the basin, they triggered this avalanche, and it buried the first rider. So Joe observed this whole situation, and what he did was he rode back, and with his crew, they helped the rider, got him out, they survived. And so on that day, Joe saved those two people's life twice. I think this earns some applause for Joe. Why I'm telling this story is because this is a great story for how successful our avalanche education is already. 10 years ago, this probably would have been a fatality, but now there are so many people that take care of each other, that watch out for each other, and I think this story is really a positive story to tell because we saved those people's life, or Joe saved this person's life twice because he was educated and they did carry avalanche rescue gear. But now I stopped talking about avalanches, let's talk about the snow. The big question this year was, where was the snow? And I can tell you what, it didn't happen in Highlight really. Mark and Alex and I did figure that out pretty quickly, but Ian and Dave were a little bit smarter about that. They knew that it was somewhere. So we found the snow in the south, and Cook City actually had a pretty decent amount of snow, and up high, our snow was way better than in the rest of the United States. However, it still was a little bit unusual. And unusual, I mean, we found percolation channels that we usually see this time of the year already in January. And that brings us to a situation that we also had to figure out how to deal with crusts. And we had suddenly melt freeze crust, ice crust, and we didn't know how to distinguish. So Dave came up with this good method to assess that.
There's a clear way to tell, and that is the taste. Yeah, that's an ice crust.
Once we had figured out the situation with the crusts, we had another problem. And for this problem, Andrew Schauer is here today, and Andrew, without you, this project would have not been possible. Alex definitely needed your inspiration for that, but Alex developed a new method to fill in pits because he was pretty annoyed that people would leave their pits not filled in. And so he was like, I just need to find a good way that everybody wants to fill in their pits.
Alex, what do we do when we find a pit that's not filled in?
Well, we do a public service and fill it in, so we don't let anyone get hurt. All right, so we're highlighting a new snow pit technique. If you dig a lot of snow pits, it's fine. You don't want to take time to thoroughly fill them back in. You might short it in by knowing you can turn it into a sea jump, which really makes the drop into your sea run even more fun. Filling your snow pits. Drumming.
You can see we even put in a boot pack for this one.
Okay, Alex, how you doing in there?
How it feels to meet you both.
Oh, yeah. Learning from your mentor. Are your feet still attached to those skis? Yeah. Something that's challenging for you.
Alex isn't here today, so I don't know if Dave left him in the tree dwell, but I leave that up to Dave to clarify that. Speaking of Dave and Kevin are old friends, and I had the honor to go out with Dave and Kevin one day on the west side of the Bridgers. And those two old friends had a lot of fun, and they chatted, and I was a little bit behind skiing towards them. And all of a sudden, they were backing up. And I was just like, God damn it, they triggered a big avalanche and I didn't see it. And so when I came towards them, they told me the story why they were backing up. And in the first place, they thought they did see an owl. Turns out the owl was not an owl, it was a bear. They had waken up and that was poking his head out of his hole. And it was even better because that bear was right next to Pat Heinz's skin track on the west side of the Bridgers. Pat Heinz is a ski patroller at Bridger Bowl who doesn't know him, and he's basically the only one who skis back there. So it was definitely a thing, and I know that people tried to find that bear, but no one else could see them, so I don't really know if Dave even saw that bear, really. Now let's talk about snowmobiling. Mark already introduced my non-existing sled skills, but at this point, I want to say thank you to Ski-Doo and highlighting that they donated 4 sleds to the GNFAC this year, which was huge. And I can tell you, we did need them for various situations. And we also tried to really look after them and take great care of them. Turns out that the parking wasn't always the easiest part of things. So unfortunately, we learned that even Mark has sometimes trouble with the parking.
What do we need to know, Tony?
You got park there for one.
Right there you can't park?
No.
Okay. What else do we need to know? Oh, that's a free lesson right there. Actually, I don't think it's free. Pretty good lesson.
The wind is unfortunately really loud, but the free lesson was don't look at the tree. Obviously, it wasn't really for free. But not just Mark had some troubles parking with the sleds, also Ian and Dave got a little bit into trouble while they played the game to drive up to the snow pit.
Are you videoing? Okay, great. So I just want to be clear that while my sled looks like it's in a bad spot, it's not stuck, and there is a gap in those trees. Now, I didn't know that before I parked it there, but it's going to be okay. And also, I, on the other hand, am stuck. Also, I was coming up to help Ian, which is a no-no in terms of snowmobilers getting stuck. But, you know, I did it anyway, and then parked into the tree.
What about your first time you got stuck on the slope to get to the thing?
Oh, yeah, I did a big trick for myself. I mousetrapped myself for the first time, nearly, not fully, but nearly.
All right, let's talk a little bit about being stuck and why Dave wasn't stuck on that situation. According to Ian, if you haven't been stuck on a ride at least once, you didn't push yourself hard enough, which sometimes was very rewarding for me because I could always say that Ian said that when I got stuck. But the definitions about being stuck varied across the GNFAC team. According to Mark, you're stuck as soon as someone else touches your snowmobile. I was pretty stuck all the damn time. According to Dave, you're only stuck when you need your shovel. So that made me feel a lot better. Maybe that's why you work in the summer of teenagers. You know how to motivate people, probably. But that's exactly why Dave wasn't stuck.
Like I said, Andrea, not stuck.
So now I'm pretty sure everyone wants to know how Dave got out of there because it doesn't look obvious. And he didn't need a shovel, and he also didn't need help.
Yeah. We got it.
So we only had to do a little bit of logging for Dave, but no shovel and no one else touched his snowmobile. We talked about a lot of personal turning points, and one of my personal turning points this season was getting to learn this attitude snowmobilers have towards getting stuck. As Mark already said, I'm born and raised in Germany, and we Germans, we really like to have a plan, particularly a plan that works out. So it's very hard for planning getting stuck. You never plan that. So we Germans also like to complain about that afterwards if our plan doesn't work out, but that's not working out if you need to get unstuck all the damn time. So I was pretty impressed by the first time everyone was excited when you get stuck to hop off the sled, get out a shovel, have fun, and just work it through. So I think it's really a skill to get unstuck and have a really good sense of humor with it. I was impressed. And to be very honest, it took me a while to adapt that attitude because when I got really stuck, like Dave stuck, we needed a shovel for that one, I felt so embarrassed in the first place. I was so sorry for Dave and me that we had to pivot from our plan because we had planned to dig so many pits, to see so many different sites. But Dave didn't really care. He was like so proud of me that I got like really stuck for the first time. And the whole GNFAC team was so proud of me. And I was just like, this is weird. Like for me, it feels like a failure. But if you see being stuck as a failure, you feel frustrated and you feel embarrassed and you're basically stuck with that situation. But if you kind of like accept it as a way to get your tools out and work your way through it and actually have fun with it, it's something you can control and work through and it doesn't feel as bad. So I took that as a lesson for other situations in my life too, and I think it works really well, especially when you manage to have fun with that situation afterwards. So thank you all for being proud of me when I got stuck. To bring it to a broader perspective and to kind of like wrap up the season highlights, I thought about turning points and the theme of today. And I struggled a lot finding the right words for why avalanches in particular are involving emotions, are involving a lot of attention. And I could never explain it until Carl put the words into my mouth. And basically, avalanches are the only natural hazard we humans can trigger. We can't trigger an earthquake, really. And so it is fascinating, and we really do want to understand this type of natural hazard because we can influence it and we can trigger it. But because we can influence it, we also get surprised and we also get humbled by it all the time. And so this season, seeing all those avalanches and getting out and watching the conditions, it reminded me of this Dunning-Kruger effect curve, because we've all been at the peak of Mount Stupid. That is when you took your first avalanche class or when you first did your backcountry ski. You thought you figured it out and you know it all. And then you drop into the valley of despair, and that might be a turning point for you in your life, where you experience something that is different from what you expected. And personally, I've been down in that valley a lot of the times. Like, I keep dropping down, but today we're all here and we are trying to learn and we are sharing our experience. So we work our way up to the slope of enlightenment. And this is, I would say, a very American style graphic because it's very positive. Mine would look like more like this, up and down, because I got humbled a lot this season. And I think we all do that. We all drop down. But I think we never drop as steep as we were on the first one. So that's a positive thing. And now I want to say thank you all for trying to at least get a little bit higher on our slope of enlightenment today, for coming here and being here. Thank you.